Okay, so here we go. We are diving into proof number 1. Okay, we've seen the baby steps, but now it's time to just dive in. So we talked about proofs before, and we know that when we're setting up proofs, all right, we're going to set them up using a 2-column proof. Okay. Now, you also know that the easiest point in solving a proof is to write out the given for your first step. All right, so our first step is to write out the given. So we have GJ is congruent to HK, and that's by given. So let's take a look at what we're trying to prove here, okay? So what we're given in all of this is that this segment of GJ is congruent to this segment of HJ. And what we're trying to prove, all right, is that GH is congruent to JK. All right, that's what we're trying to prove, okay? But let's just kind of see why this makes sense, though. So if we're given that the full segment of GJ, all right, is congruent to this full segment of HK, what segment do they both have in common? Well, they both have this HJ in common, right? So what we're trying to prove then is that this segment of GH is congruent to this segment of JK, okay? Now, let's go ahead and take a look at what we're given. And the issue is that we don't have much to work off of, okay? So let's just kind of go off the fact that we're given that the length, or that segment GJ is congruent to segment HK. So my question is, though, is what does that mean? What does it mean if those segments are congruent? Well, we know that that means that their lengths are equal. And that's going to be our next step, all right? So a lot of those times it's just using your given to see how that's going to take you to the next step. So we're going to say the length of GJ is equal to the length of HK, and that's by definition of congruence. Okay. The issue, though, is at this point, that kind of stopped us, all right? We really don't have much more that we can go off of. So what did I tell you was our best friend? That when we're stuck, this is what we go to, and that's segment addition postulate, all right? So what we're going to do is we're going to look at our picture to see if we could write a segment addition postulate, all right, for any of these segments. So if you take a look at GJ, all right, which is what I have highlighted there, can we write a segment addition postulate for it? We can, right? We could do GH plus HJ equals the full length of GJ, all right, and that's going to be my next step. So when you're stuck, try segment addition postulate, all right? So GH plus HJ equals GJ, and that's by segment addition. And again, that's not super helpful, but now let's take a look at, can we also write it for HK? We can, all right? We could do HJ plus JK is equal to the full length of HK. All right, so our step 4 is HJ plus JK equals HK. And that is also through segment addition. Okay. So what I want us to do is, once again, come up to see what we're trying to prove. We're trying to prove, all right, that this segment of GH is congruent to this segment of JK. So that's what we're trying to prove. We have to get there somehow, though. So here's what I want you to look at. I want you to take a look at step 2. And then I also want you to take a look at step 3 and step 4 and see if there's something we can do in there. So here's what I want you to look at, all right? Do you see how GH plus HJ is equal to GJ? All right, but I have GJ up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take GH plus HJ and plug it in for GJ right there. All right, so my step 5 is I'm going to take that GH plus HJ, plug it in for GJ. Same idea, I have HJ plus JK equal to HK. I have HK up here. So I'm going to take HJ plus JK, take this, plug it in for HK right there. So at this point, I'm going to have GH plus HJ equals HJ plus JK. And that's through substitution. Okay, so again, you need to know what we're trying to prove. So what we're trying to prove is that GH is congruent to JK. So here's what I want you to look at. I now have in this GH and JK, but what do I have added to both of those? I have HJ added to both of those. I want to get rid of it. So how do I get rid of addition? Well, I subtract it, right? So I'm going to subtract HJ from both sides. And those are going to cancel out, right? So what I'm left with is GH equals JK, and I'm so close at this point, right? So my step 6 is through subtraction. And now you have to just take a look at what we're trying to prove. And remember, it has to look exactly, all right? I have GH is congruent to JK. Step 6, I have GH is equal to JK. So remember, anytime when we need to change from congruence into equals or equals into congruence, it's the same step. It's definition of congruence. So now I have segment GH is congruent to segment JK, and that's by definition of congruence. Wow, we just did our first proof, okay? If that was a real struggle, it's okay. We're going to do some more. All right, tomorrow we have some more as well. But we are going to come back, all right, to the next video to do proof.